Well, I don't know about full-time, but the very beginning was I would sing all the time to express myself, my joy, my fun, and I would sing with my mother and my Auntie Sylvia, who's another great singer. All my mother's family were really good singers.
And the reason, what I've been doing while I've been away and stuff like that, you know. So I'm literally using them as a tool, and they'll use me to sell copies, presumably.
The legendary voice of rock, David Coverdale, recently made the final announcement, hanging up the rock and roll platform shoes and the skin-tight jeans for good. It marks the end of an incredible 50-year-plus career, and the outpouring of support from fans was immediate. But what most people don't realize is that this retirement isn't just about hitting a milestone. It was a decision forced by a years-long, terrifying health battle that nearly destroyed him. This is the untold story of the deep conflicts, stunning betrayals, and shocking physical tolls that defined the life of the Whitesnake and Deep Purple frontman, the final curtain, and the real reason why. The farewell tour was already on the road, with Whitesnake scheduled for a massive run in Europe and North America. Then, without warning, the entire thing imploded. Cancellations hit the wire, with the official word citing a persistent upper respiratory infection. It sounded like a setback, but the truth was far more sinister. Coverdale later revealed he was fighting an illness that made even his decades of singing experience look useless. It wasn't just a cold, it was an ugly infection that ravaged his system for 7 long months. For a singer, this wasn't just a physical challenge. It was a career death sentence. He was aggressively taking strong antibiotics and horrifying prednisone steroids just to cope. At 74, the grueling demand of a world tour became physically unsustainable. The choice was clear: health and family first, or face a complete physical breakdown. This sudden stop wasn't the first time Coverdale's ambition clashed violently with his physical and professional limits. To understand why he had to walk away now, you have to go back to the utterly impossible moment his career began. Deep Purple, from shop assistant to stadium star, the impossible ascent. Imagine working a quiet job in a clothing boutique in Middlesbrough. Now, imagine a phone call that says you're the new frontman for Deep Purple. That was David Coverdale in 1973. He went from total obscurity to replacing Ian Gillan in one of the biggest, most volatile bands in the world. This was the ultimate zero-to-hero story, but it meant stepping into an internal war zone right from day one. He was suddenly sharing a stage with musical monsters like Ritchie Blackmore, a man known for his genius, but also his notoriously difficult temperament. Coverdale was the newbie, navigating the destructive yet incredibly fertile dynamic with bassist Glenn Hughes. The creative output of this era, Deep Purple Mark III and IV, was stellar, but the internal friction was overwhelming. By 1976, the band was a shattered shell. Blackmore had already stormed off. The final iteration, with Tommy Bolin, was exhausted and riddled with problems. Deep Purple officially imploded, leaving Coverdale, just a few years into his career, professionally adrift and searching for a way to simply survive. He was a rock god 1 minute and scrambling for relevance the next. This dramatic, chaotic end forced him to create something entirely new, but his next journey would be a slow, financial grind. Whitesnake's hidden years, broke, blue, and battling Europe. After the Deep Purple catastrophe, Coverdale needed a fresh start. He formed Whitesnake in 1978, and for the first 6 years, they were a world away from the glamorous MTV version you know. This was a gritty, working-class blues rock band focused on soulful, extended jams and an intimate sound. They were musically rich, grounded, and almost entirely confined to the UK and Europe. The shocking truth is that despite his fame from Deep Purple, the early Whitesnake years were a severe financial struggle. They were grinding out tours, often living hand-to-mouth, and constantly fighting for attention in the massive American market that had ignored their blues rock sound. This intense, non-stop touring schedule was physically punishing. While the financial success was elusive, the pressure to break the USA was relentless, and it led to a creative turning point that would alienate his core audience and result in a devastating betrayal of his bandmates. The time for soulful blues was over. A drastic, controversial change was coming. The MTV makeover, selling the soul for the USA, the Great Divide. By the mid-'80s, Coverdale realized the blues rock approach was a dead end in America. The only way forward was a complete, dramatic makeover. This was the era of excess, and Coverdale went all in, transforming Whitesnake into the polished, big-budget hair metal machine that would conquer MTV. The result was the 1987 self-titled album, a monster of rock. But this was a professional scandal that came at an immense human cost. To achieve the perfect radio-ready sound, Coverdale ruthlessly cleaned house, firing nearly every member of the original Whitesnake lineup. It was a massive professional betrayal driven by ambition and the desire for superstardom. He had to be cruel to be kind to his career. The album was a gamble, a desperate, high-stakes attempt to reinvent himself. Furthermore, the vocal demands of the new, higher-pitched, more powerful songs meant he was pushing his voice to the absolute breaking point. The risk was enormous, but the rewards were even bigger. However, the biggest conflict of this entire era was brewing with the very genius who helped build that new sound. The John Sykes sensation, an untimely and shocking exit. The key to the 1987 album's transformation was the aggressive modern guitar work of John Sykes. Sykes didn't just play on the album. He was Coverdale's creative co-pilot, driving the songwriting and sound of classics like Still of the Night. It was a legendary, explosive collaboration. Yet, here is the truly shocking part of the story. Coverdale fired John Sykes and the rest of the recording band right before the album became a global phenomenon. Sykes was out the door before he could taste the success of the multi-platinum record he helped create. Coverdale essentially swapped the band that recorded the album for a more photogenic, MTV-ready lineup that toured the album. This move created a silent, decades-long resentment. Sykes was left on the sidelines, watching a massive tour happen with his own work being played by others. The intense professional friction and the final cold decision to oust Sykes remains one of the most controversial and least-known facts about Whitesnake's biggest success. After achieving that level of unbelievable chart-topping fame, Coverdale was about to crash hard. The 90s shadow, hitting the wall, and the great disappearance. The demands of maintaining the rock and roll machine were relentless. Following the massive success of 1987, the subsequent album, Slip of the Tongue, while successful, showed the strain. The need to replicate that specific sound and image was exhausting, and the internal pressure proved too much. By the early 90s, David Coverdale was completely, utterly burnt out. He had spent 2 decades in the crucible of rock superstardom, facing down difficult bandmates, financial struggles, and intense vocal demands. In the mid-90s, David Coverdale essentially vanished from the spotlight. This quiet disappearance is an often forgotten dramatic period. He wasn't touring, he wasn't recording. He stepped away from the entire business to focus on his family and simply recover. This long hiatus was a necessary surrender, a period of healing and recovery that allowed him to eventually return. His 2000 and something resurgence was unexpected, bringing Whitesnake back to the world's stage. But his final tour was a stark, brutal reminder that the years of fighting had finally taken their final toll. The legacy of a fighter. David Coverdale's career was never the smooth, glossy ride the music videos suggested. It was a half-century of fighting, battling his way into Deep Purple, fighting for survival in the starving early days of Whitesnake, and fighting through a professional betrayal to finally conquer America. But the final fight, the internal, 7-month-long health crisis, was one he couldn't win without a total surrender. The retirement isn't just a farewell, it's a necessary sacrifice. It's the final curtain call of a fighter who always put his art and his ambition first, but has now, finally, put his health and family first. He exits the stage after a truly legendary journey, having survived every single battle the rock world could throw at him. What is your favorite David Coverdale track and why? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Eye on Fame for more shocking stories and reveals from the world of music legends.